So the start of the race then, and a really important move from Lando Norris. But let's see, the moment the lights go out, there's a big discrepancy between the inside and the outside of the grid. So let's watch it. Russell on pole, Verstappen alongside him on the soft tyres. And you can see, as I pause it, already here, you can see the difference between the less grippy inside. It's dirty and dusty. Remember, Singapore's a street circuit. Wasn't sure if the rain in the morning might have actually evened out play, but it just hasn't. You can see, first of all, Antonelli has been scooped up by Norris. You're going to have Hamilton here losing out to Charles Leclerc straight away. Hadjar's on the back foot. You've got Alonso on the back foot, and you've even got Lawson on the back foot further ahead. So pretty much everyone on the inside has suffered with the lack of grip. Verstappen hasn't, and he's done well here to be ahead of Piastri. He chose the soft tyre, the same actually as Isaac Hadjar further back. But that choice was punchy by Red Bull, and probably it's the reason that Verstappen can stay in second place from the dirty side of the grid. So an interesting tactic there. But let's play it through now, because what we're looking for is Norris charging now to the back of Max Verstappen and Oscar Piastri. So here we go. He's ditched Antonelli. At this point, Piastri has a chance to go to the inside, maybe, of Verstappen, or at least try and cover Norris. But it's enticing to go for that outside line and put the pressure on Max, who's coming from that less grippy side of the grid. So he goes for it. And at this point now, he's suffering because he cannot get back towards the apex where Lando's dangled a nose in. So he's that momentary choice to look for the outside, left the inside line open for Lando, and now he's clean up the inside at turn 3, right alongside. The only thing that's left is to try and get round the corner without hitting the back of Max Verstappen. Now, we play this through slowly, and you can see that the moment there is that bit of contact just there is where things are going to get dicey between the two McLarens. We know the front wing end plate broke on Lando's car. There's the moment, and it just washes Norris into Piastri. That's the secondary contact there, and the second McLaren's nearly in the wall on the exit. So a bit of a risky one. But in the end, Norris, aggressive, assertive, with a bit of argy-bargy, is up into P3. Let's have a look at it from Lando's point of view, because it's a really good start here from a driver that needed it after a poor qualifying. Gets a great clutch drop, has the grip. Goodbye, Antonelli on the inside. And now we're already eyes forward looking at Piastri. So this is where Oscar just starts to look to the outside of Max ahead. And you can see it just opens the door for Lando to now release the brakes, carry the speed, and prevent Oscar from cutting him off on the inside. It's understandable decisions from Piastri, but it does just open up this chance for Norris now on the inside. Next thing is, he's got to try and match Piastri on the brakes for turn 3, which is difficult because Oscar hasn't got Max directly in front of him. This is what entices Norris to get right to the back of Verstappen's car and even clip it. We can play it through slowly and see once again. We're okay here. He's matched Piastri. This is perfect wheel-to-wheel at the moment from Norris, but he's got the Red Bull sitting on the apex there. And that's going to be the peril for Norris. He gets away with this one. Clipping there, has the big oversteer, and that just pitches him momentarily into Piastri, but through he goes. Very lucky, actually, to get away with it. I like the start from Norris. It was punchy, it was aggressive. He had to do it to keep himself in the championship hunt, but it could have ended in tears, not least because of his own front wing into the back of the Red Bull rather than the actual McLaren contact. Finally, let's have a look at it with Oscar. And you can see once again, looking for that gap on the outside, stops him cutting back towards an apex and holding off Lando. But he can carry loads of speed here in towards turn 3. Norris does the same. There's your contact between the McLarens, fortunately as well, is wheel to wheel. So there's no big damage here. You're not hitting a front wing. You're not going to puncture a tyre then. It's just wheel to wheel, and they both get away with it. Oscar has to hit the brakes and cede the position, otherwise he can be pitched into the barriers. So difficult one for Piastri. And in fact, one final look could be with Charles Leclerc, who also started on that outside line, passes Lewis Hamilton, and I really like the start from Leclerc. Gives us a nice view of the McLarens, but it also is a lovely pass on Kimi Antonelli that set up his race to battle the Mercedes. There you go, contact 1, contact 2, and Leclerc then is trying to pass Piastri, but cannot make it through. Question on this, and it was a question that Oscar Piastri was asking as well. Do you think Lando and Oscar should have swapped like they did in Monza? My fundamental answer is no, but I don't think they should have swapped in Monza. And I think this is the problem that McLaren are getting themselves into here with their manipulation of what they deem fair. The difficulty is they're kind of acting as their own race stewards between the two drivers. I can understand Oscar asking for it. You know, the contact certainly put him off. It certainly cemented the move for Lando. But in my opinion, that's hard wheel-to-wheel racing. Little touches happen on the first lap. The stewards looked at it and sensibly thought there was nothing more in that. And I could see Oscar's frustration after Monza, where a slow pit stop meant he had to swap the positions around. Felt like that was the fair thing to do on the day. A little bit of contact there. Was that fair from Lando? I can understand Oscar feeling a little bit aggrieved at this point, but I think in this instance, they were right to let the drivers race on. I think they should have done that in Monza. I think they've made a run for their own back, and it's happened the very first time that the drivers are racing each other again on the track. Question is, what happens now moving forward? They have to let the drivers race. This is the moment. I think we're going to see gloves off in the championship.
I need to go and look at it. Obviously there was contact, which is never ideal, but I'll go and have a look at the replays.
Half the track was still wet, so it was a bit sketchy at times. Easy to have little corrections and things like I had in turn 3. And there was a little bit of contact and that was it. So nothing more than that.
So the sharp end after that was pretty stagnant between Russell, Verstappen, Norris, Piastri not quite having the pace of those ahead, but did catch late on. And they ran 4 in a row, pretty much for the entire Grand Prix. Not much they could do. So qualifying became the interesting factor where positions might have changed. Norris was the big loser in qualifying. 5th on the grid, he had to make that aggressive start. He might not have had to do that had he got through the final chicane well on his last lap. You can see the data here. This is Norris in the red versus Piastri in the blue. And Lando barrels speed into this final chicane, gets on the curb and loses a lot of time. He's actually quite well up on Oscar, about a 10th up coming into the corner, and should have been fighting for a place on the front row where Max Verstappen was starting. Certainly should have been in the top 3, but that mistake coming off the curb cost him a lot of time, and that is why he ended up in P5, but made amends on Sunday morning with his aggressive race start. The other one was Max Verstappen, who was very disgruntled with the end of his qualifying. Let's have a look at it on board. You can see that's Lando Norris up the road. Lando's completed his flying lap now. Max is the last car over the line again. Red Bull have gone punchy like they did in Baku, trying to get the most out of the track evolution. And Max thinks that this was a bit of impeding from Norris, or a bit of dirty air from Norris, really more. It's obviously not impeding. Lando is quite a long way up the road. The dirty air wash does come quite a long way back. But for me, this is kind of fair game. Max barrels the speed in and misses his apex, searching for the final 10th that would have gone through. You can see what he thinks about it as he gives a sarcastic thumbs up to Lando pulling into the pits. I don't think that there's much in that one at all, to be honest. For Max, probably the lap time wasn't going to be there anyway. He was improving on his best, but this is the data of Verstappen compared to Russell. And once again, you can see he's about a 10th down coming into that final chicane. So I think that's why he's braking really late, trying to carry the speed. Maybe a hint of dirty air didn't help him, but I think he was on his way to second place at that point anyway. So a question at the sharp end is, do you think if Max was P1 and Russell was P2 that George would still win? Well, no, I don't think so, because the pace on race day was actually very even. Red Bull opted for that soft tyre, which kind of inflated the gap that George had running the medium, which was the preferred tyre in that first stint. But if Verstappen could have got pole, I think he also would have won the race. It would have been really big for Red Bull had he done that, with Russell then being a buffer to the 2 McLarens. But problem is, Russell did 2 outstanding laps for pole position on Saturday, and Verstappen, even with his sort of dirty air moment, wasn't going to get there. So this one was a deserved win for George Russell and for Mercedes. An outstanding weekend for him, really born out of 2 great qualifying laps. In fact, just brushing the wall on the first one at the same place as both Norris and Verstappen ran into trouble. Final question on all of this one is there still a chance Max can win the Drivers' Championship? I have to say, yes, there is. More than I thought before Singapore. I think the fact that Red Bull were competitive on a very different circuit to Baku and Monza does speak now that they have found something on the car. These are the sort of tracks, Singapore, where Max has never won. Red Bull haven't been that competitive in recent years. So if they're fighting for a victory here, I think they can now fight for wins everywhere else. And it should be a chance for Max to get himself towards the championship fight. Of course, he's going to need a little bit of something else. He's going to need Russell to be quick again, maybe Antonelli, maybe the Ferraris, because if the McLarens finish 2nd and 3rd, they will still finish ahead of Max Verstappen in the championship. So he's going to have the pace. He's going to need a little bit more than that to fight for the title.
We were more competitive, but I think it's still not our favorite layout, let's say like that. But then maybe some other tracks will come to us a bit more. So yeah, we just have to see it race by race.
Amazing to get a win here because this track has not been my best friend over the years. Most of the time through my own doing. So I felt that I had a bit to make amends here. And then obviously it is the most physical track of the season. And it's the longest race of the year. You know, it's half an hour longer than the race in Monza 4 races ago. So by the end I was destroyed. I lost almost 4 kilos. So I was glad to cross the line of the lead.